So my name's Deni. I'm with Mesa County Child Welfare. My face may be familiar to some of you. I did start my child welfare career at Ariel. At Child Welfare, I am a child protection community liaison. And what that means is that I do a lot of receiving and outreach. So we receive all incoming referrals, whether that's through the hotline, through email, through fax. We also do outreach. We do mandatory reporter trainings with the community, get together with agencies that we frequently work with, make sure that things are going smoothly. The other aspect of our position is that we do specialized assessments, and that is the egregious assessments, the near fatals, the fatal assessments, and then we also do the institutional assessments, which is what I am here to talk with you guys about. So the reason why we decided to put together this training, and when I say we, it's a team of, we've got 5 caseworkers and a supervisor, but we discovered that there's a lot of questions when we are doing an institutional assessment.
And when you refer to institutional, that's basically
That is, yep, so an institutional is any place or agency that is caring for children who are licensed. So that is group homes, daycares, foster homes, the Division of Youth Services. I think I'm missing a couple, but those are the big ones.
Okay, so when you refer, just so everyone knows, when you say institutional, in our case, it's our foster homes.
And yep, in this case, it would be, foster or kin homes who are licensed, that concerns come in and they meet criteria for us to do an assessment. Sometimes it's referred to as an investigation. They're kind of used interchangeably. So what we discovered was when we are doing institutional assessments that people had a lot of questions about, what does this mean? What's the process? What does this mean for my license? What does this mean for the children in my home or in my care? So we figured if we put together a training that would answer some of those questions beforehand, that way, if one of me or my colleagues are knocking on your guys' door saying, hey, we have an assessment, we need to talk to those kiddos, it won't feel as daunting, and it'll feel a little bit more like, okay, Deni came and she did a training. I know that, this has got to happen, XYZ, so it won't be as daunting and it won't be as scary, though it is scary and it's emotional and stressful, and we totally understand that. And we will probably re-explain the process a couple of times, and that's okay. But hopefully it makes this a little bit more familiar.
Okay, awesome. So we've got a lot of people joining us. I don't know if you just want to touch base on like the different slides that you had, or?
Yeah, I was thinking I could just go over some of the slides. I'm not going to go through the whole training. It's about a 45-minute to an hour training, and I know that we don't have time for that, but I just wanted to kind of go briefly over some of them. I know we've talked, I know that in the core training, you guys have some information and some training about the institutional assessments or investigations. Talk about it's not if, it's when. So it's not as common, and at the end of the slides there is some data if you're interested. A lot of our institutional assessments or referrals are screened out. They don't meet criteria for us to do an assessment, but some of them do, and you're not alone. If we do end up knocking on your door to do an assessment, you're not alone. You're not getting singled out by the department. Nobody's out to get you. you know, it happens, not as often as some would think, which is good.
Yeah.
But it's okay. Take a deep breath. There is some people who are abusing and neglecting children in licensed facilities, and that's why we are here to do our jobs to make sure that children are safe, and that is our main priority, is child safety.
Sorry, it sounds like maybe we need to speak up a little bit, just because. I'm
sure.
sorry, guys. Let us know if this helps.
Yes.
We'll try to speak a little bit louder.
I'll use my teacher voice. And I did just want to say that just because an allegation has been made or we have an assessment on your family, that does not automatically mean that we think abuse or neglect occurred. That's part of the assessment process, is for us to figure out what happened, and in that process we come to our conclusion on if abuse or neglect has happened. You know, but we don't come in saying you're guilty, or you know, we think that this happened and we're here to prove it no matter what. Really, we come into it with an open mind and say, you know, these concerns came in, let's talk about it. One thing that we do want to let you guys know ahead of time is that we do need to talk to the children first. So don't feel that just because I say, you know, hey, we have an assessment and I need to talk to the kids, you know, that's how we run every institutional assessment. And we will certainly give you the time and the space and the floor to talk about what the concerns are, what happened, you know, what's going on, how are the kids doing, those sort of things from your perspective, because that information is very helpful for us in determining, you know, what happened.
So, first thing you do, always talk to the kids.
Talk to the kids.
Okay. So after you talk to them, do you go and tell everybody what the kids said, word for word?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. So, after we talk to the kids, either during the same meeting, or we come back at a later time and we talk to the foster parents, we talk to everybody in the home.
Okay.
So that does include, if you have your own biological children, that we'll want to talk to them, you know, get their perspective, get, you know, what did they see happen, those sort of things. And, you know, just like any other assessment, confidentiality is certainly a concern that we try to uphold. So, you know, we're not going back to the department and saying, hey, guess what? You know, it's just kept between the worker, our supervisor, and then the treatment team if it's needed.
When I had a good question. Is your assessment conducted differently if the child is nonverbal? I think obviously infants, but if they're
I can't say, hey, what happened?
But if they're old enough to somewhat communicate,
we will try to communicate as best we can. Oftentimes, especially if a child is nonverbal, due to some delays or something like that, we'll try to bring maybe their case manager with us, somebody who's familiar to the child, and you know, try to make the child as comfortable as possible. We have to talk about some tough stuff, but if we can make the child comfortable by bringing a familiar face, the GAL, a CASA worker,
another professional.
Another professional to come in and sit with us and try to kind of bridge that gap, we will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No, I think that
okay.
was... You can move forward.
I can move on? Okay. Let's see. I did want to talk a little bit. Do we have Delta families too?
We do. We've got
okay.
Everyone should
all
be
of
on.
Them.
So yeah.
All of them. So I did want to talk a little bit about jurisdiction.
Okay.
Just because that's something that I don't think is often talked about during an assessment. And just more FYI information for you guys is that our jurisdiction, so which department can assess which families. Our jurisdiction lies wherever the institution is. So, for example, for you Delta families, me and my team will not come down and assess in your home. So
even
that would
if the kid's a Mesa County.
Even if the kid is a Mesa County child, it would be a Delta County assessment.
Okay.
Yep. To give you an example, I just recently had an assessment that Denver County actually was the one who licensed the foster home or the kin home, and the kin home moved here, and so I actually was the one that did the assessment, even though they were completely based out of Denver County. So
awesome. Okay, so that works both ways. So
yes.
if it's a call here in Mesa County,
Mm-hmm.
Mesa County deals with it.
Yep. If it's in Delta or Montrose or whichever county, then that county would be the one who's doing the assessment.
Okay. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It can kind of be a little unfamiliar if you're not used to
Mm-hmm.
that county, but it makes sense whatever jurisdiction they lay in.
Yep.
Okay.
And so law enforcement sometimes gets involved in our assessments. Most often for sex abuse cases. Luckily, those don't happen often. But law enforcement jurisdiction is wherever the crime occurred. So sometimes we'll get a little bit of cross collaboration, but for the most part, it's local. So I'm not going to go over the types of abuse or neglect because I know that you guys had to take a course on that during your core training. But I did want to touch on sometimes we receive concerns, and they're valid concerns. They're things that should not be happening in a foster home, but they're a licensing concern. So that's something where it doesn't rise to the level of abuse or neglect, but it's still a concern that needs to be addressed. And we do share those with our licensing agencies, whether that's your aerial staff. We let like for childcare, we let their licensing agent know. So it's certainly not to single out anybody, but if we get concerns that need to be addressed, then certainly we will touch base with the licensing agency and ask for them to address the concerns. And there's multiple slides in here about the difference between institutional assessments versus licensing concerns. That is pulled directly from our agency response guide. So, if there's any concerns, specific concerns about that, I'd be happy to answer any of those concerns or any of those questions. I probably won't go over each one though.
So I do have a couple questions about timeline.
Sure.
I'm so sorry guys, I feel like they said if it's a serious issue, why does it take so long to get them out of the home? But if it's I guess with institutionals, if it's a serious issue and founded or a risk, the kids would be put in respite or something.
Correct. Yeah. So if there's if the kids are in imminent danger is what we call that. So if they're in imminent danger, then we will work with the licensing agency to make arrangements so that the children are safe, whether that's safety planning somebody out of the home, having the kids go to respite, those sort of things. So we do have 3 different response times. Not to go too far into detail about it, but we do have what's called an immediate, which means that the children are in imminent danger. We have to respond and see the children within 8 hours of that concern coming in. There's what's called a 3-day, so that means we have 72 hours to see the child, and then a 5-day response time. Those are the most common. It's where the children are not in imminent danger. The children are not getting severely bodily harm, those sort of things. And then we have 5 business days to make contact with the child. And then, of course, all of our other interviews will follow.
Mm-hmm. And I think that this is a huge question that comes up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Biological parents will make a complaint about foster parents. Does that get investigated the same way? So wouldn't you say that all calls that come in
Mm-hmm.
are handled the same way, but because you guys sit and you rule out and see which ones are
Mm-hmm.
in?
Yes, so we take all calls the same level of seriousness, just because, crazy,
technically don't know who's calling.
You don't know who's calling, but if we have, a family member who is calling about another family member, we take that just as serious as a school counselor calling in. What we have, there is some truth in what is being said, and then it's up to the department and the team of individuals who review those to kind of determine the credibility of a referral source, determine if, when we base that off of history, what's voiced as a concern, those sort of things, and we review that information, and then we determine which assessment to go, which referral meets criteria for an assessment. We handle the institutional referrals the same way. We listen to, the calls the same way, and give everybody the same amount of respect. And then we determine the credibility, the concern. Is it a licensing concern, or is it, abuse or neglect allegation? So if birth parents call in a concern to the hotline, we take it as a referral. It's screened through our team. If a complaint is made, like to the caseworker directly, and the caseworker does not hear any abuse or neglect, then the caseworker will just kind of process that with the birth parent.
Okay, so that makes sense. So, but things are ruled out. Not every call is going to be investigated.
Correct. And in fact, at the end of the PowerPoint, we can just go over some of the numbers real quick. Oh, that's funny. My pie charts.
Do they pull up different on your iPad?
They look different on my iPad.
Would it look different in landscape one?
So there's a little over, I believe it's a little over a quarter of the institutional referrals that come in that are assigned. So very little amount. We assign more intrafamilial referrals than institutionals as far as like ratio goes, percentage wise. So not every call that comes in is assigned. In fact, the majority of them are screened out and do not meet criteria for us to do an assessment.
Okay. Yeah. I think you can go on.
I can go on. Okay. I just wanted to go over briefly some tips to hopefully avoid some unwarranted or tips to avoid unnecessary referrals on you and your family. The first thing is document like crazy. If little Johnny falls on the playground and gets a big gash on his forehead, document that, call your caseworker, talk to them, let them know. Especially if they have a visit in the near future, if you can call and give the caseworker a heads up, they can call, give the birth parents a heads up, it goes much, much smoother.
Yes, when little Johnny shows up to a visit with a giant goose egg or cut on his head, and we can immediately say, here's the incident report, like this is what happened.
Absolutely.
It goes a lot better than, I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
That looks like a big bump. Yeah. So communicate. I'm sure some of you feel like you're communicating all the time with your team, and I just encourage you guys to keep up with that. Don't delay seeking, medical treatment or, needing to talk with, your child's therapist or anything like that. Don't perform restraints unless you've had some training, and I know foster parents don't have any training, so no restraints.
Yep, we don't restrain.
But make sure that you guys really understand your licensing expectations, those rules and regulations that are gone over at the beginning of core training. Like, be up to date on those. Know kind of what the limits are, those sort of things. That way, you don't make any mistakes. Those are the hard ones, when you make a genuine mistake and something happens and a kid gets hurt. Those are tough. Be aware of your kiddo's needs. I know when we're dropping kids off in the middle of the night, that's really hard. But it goes hand in hand with the documentation, the kids' behaviors, because that gives us a lot of background, a lot of insight when that information is shared with us during an assessment.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Not regarding that.
Okay. So I did want to talk briefly about what happens when a report is received. So within our team, we review it. We get everybody's opinions as far as, do we think it meets criteria? We look at our agency response guide. We pull up our rules and regulations, and then we decide if it meets criteria for us to do an assessment. If it does, then we will be contacting your licensing agency, give Ariel a heads up and say, hey, we've got this going on, when can we go out together? We try to go out together as much as possible. And then we're showing up on your doorstep, we're knocking on the door and saying, hey, I need to talk to those kiddos. From that point, we'll talk with you guys, we'll talk with anybody else in the home. If there's anybody else who was possibly a witness, or anybody else who might have some important information about what happened, let us know. Part of our assessment is to gather collateral information, good or bad. If somebody wants to, speak highly of you, we love to hear that. We want to hear it. So we'll speak with some collaterals, we'll speak with the caseworker, the GAL, those sort of things, get their perspectives. We have 60 days from the time that the referral came in to finish our assessment. So it may feel like a rush in the beginning, and then there might be a couple of weeks that pass by before we have our conclusion or our decision. So no need to worry. We've got 60 days to do that. We try to do them as fast as possible, because we know that when there's an assessment going on, life is a little bit crazier than usual. There's more stress, there's more emotion. So we want to get some resolution for you guys and for the kiddos. So we try to complete them as fast as possible. Sometimes there's things that hold up our process that we have no control over, and hopefully we try to communicate that with you guys.
And that's why there was a question. If an assessment is done, do we get notification one way or the other if founded or not? And I knew you were going to review this, so I waited a minute.
Yes.
Or is no news good news in this situation?
So we will always let you know what the findings are. And for those of you who don't know what findings are, we have 3 possible outcomes of every assessment. An unfounded finding is when there's no abuse or neglect occurred. We didn't find any evidence to support the allegation. An inconclusive is that we found some evidence to support that there was abuse or neglect occurred, but some pieces of information are missing, like who, or what, or where, or how. For an example, an inconclusive finding might be, a baby has a suspicious mark, on them, and we know that the baby's not rolling over, not cruising. They shouldn't. They're not moving. They're not bruising. So we know that something happened to this child, but nobody saw what happened, or nobody's talking about what happened. So we know that something happened, but we just don't know who. So that would be like an inconclusive assessment, or an inconclusive finding. And then a founded finding is that we have probable evidence to support that the abuse or neglect did occur. And in child welfare land, we have to prove 51% is our burden of proof. So if we have enough evidence to say 51% sure that this happened, then that is a founded finding. You should get a call from the assessment worker to let you guys know what the finding is. If it's a founded finding, you will get a letter. And on the back of that letter is some instructions if you would like to appeal the finding. That's absolutely right, and I encourage all parents and all foster parents to appeal a founded finding, just because it's more eyes on the case, more eyes on the assessment, and you know, sometimes the people at the state who handle the appeals are able to you know, reverse it, or they may be able to say, you know, this was the first offense. Well, you know, if you have no more founded findings in 2 years, we'll wipe it clean from your record or something like that. So I encourage everybody to file an appeal. Even if I think I did a good job, you still file an appeal.
Yeah. I have a question. Is it possible for you guys to share what your process is when ruling things out? I believe we look at this document and ask these questions to see if it meets the needs. If it does, then our next step is.
Yeah, so I wish it was that black and white. We work with families, we work with kiddos, we work with humans and human behavior. It's very dependent on the situation, the family, the kiddo. I will say that some of our process is, you know, when we're gathering all of our information, we're talking with the kids, we're talking with you guys, you know, we're looking at any incident reports, any, you know, documentation regarding that.
But there's no scoring system.
There's no scoring system. Unfortunately, not.
If they get this score, then we investigate. No.
Nope.
Okay.
It's really based on the laws of abuse or neglect that we have to go off of. If as an assessment worker, you know, I'm thinking, yep, I think it's a founded finding, or gosh, you know, I don't know, I could go both ways. You know, I could be an inconclusive, I could be a founded, you know, and certainly there are those cases that you go back and forth on. Then we have our management meeting, and that's with us, our supervisor, and then our managers and a therapist consult. And what we do is we lay it all out. We say, here's everything that I have found in my assessment. You know, here are my thoughts. Here are the laws. Here are the rules and regulations. This is where I feel like it might lie. It might lie at a founded. It might lie at an inconclusive. It might be an unfounded. And then we have a big discussion about it, and we talk about the evidence, and typically from that we come out with our finding.
Okay. And I got a question. Can others, like teachers, appeal a non-founded finding? So I assume this means if a teacher or someone called on a family and they knew they didn't get a founded charge. I mean, I don't think other people can't really appeal that. You just have to keep calling and making the reports if it's a continued abuse.
Yeah, so we don't share the outcome of the assessment with the referral source, or with, you know, teachers or therapists or anything like that, unless it has to do with the child's safety. but they can't appeal that decision. And an appeal is only for a founded finding. You know, if a referral source, a teacher calls in and says, I know this happened, we go out and we are not able to find that evidence, you know, a teacher can't say, well, you need to look at it again, or I appeal that, you know, appeal your decision. You know, we just encourage them to continue to call in their concerns. You know, if anything new comes up, to let us know, because that might change things. We never know.
Yeah, and I mean, in situations with teachers, and you know, we're all mandated reporters, but also documentation is key for that as well.
Huge.
Okay. I don't think we have any more questions regarding that piece.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, one thing that I did want to talk about, just real briefly, is going back on the licensing concerns versus abuse or neglect. And I just wanted to put it out there. I know that there's been some misinformation or misconception that if there's a licensing concern and it doesn't rise to the level of abuse or neglect, you know, the licensing agency, so that would be Ariel in your guys' case, they still have the ability to revoke your license. They don't have to wait for us to give a founded finding or, you know, something like that. So I did just want to put that out there that, you know, sometimes they go hand in hand. But I did want to put that out there that, you know, if there's a licensing concern or licensing violation after violation after violation, and it doesn't rise to the level of abuse or neglect, that there still can be consequences to that. And so I just wanted to put that out there, because I know that sometimes people think, oh, it didn't rise to the level of abuse or neglect, so it's no big deal. And it still is a big deal. There are licensing rules for a reason, and so I just wanted to go around back to that. Another thing that might happen in an assessment is, you know, we talked about that imminent risk or that imminent danger, that things may, you know, kids might be put on respite, or somebody may be asked to leave the house if it's that dangerous for the children, and you'll feel like kind of your house is on hold, and I know that oftentimes, you know, nobody comes in, nobody comes out, there's no placement changes, we don't add new kids when there's an assessment. So I did just want to kind of touch base on that, and I wanted to touch base that though we have, you know, your aerial case manager and your aerial, you know, supports involved in the assessment, they can't talk to you about the assessment. You know, I know that you guys often lean on your aerial case managers for support, which is so wonderful. And I also know that there have been times where there's some frustration that the aerial case manager can't talk about the assessment, or you know, those sort of things. So we would love for your aerial case manager to be there for support for you. And just know that when we leave, they can't talk about the assessment. So certainly, another thing that I wanted to just say is communicate with us. You know, we want to hear what happened. You know, if you have a thought in the middle of the night of, oh my gosh, I forgot to tell Deni about this, you know, big meltdown that Johnny had earlier that day, gosh, you know, call me and tell me about it. I won't pick up at midnight, but you know, we'll be sure to touch base a couple of times, and don't be scared to, you know, call us and say, you know, where are we at? How is it going? Where are you in the process?
So when you do an investigation, you give them your card, and
I hand you my card. You've got my email address. You've got my phone number. You know, you can call, you can email. I've done a couple of assessments where the foster parents just wanted to email for their documentation, which I loved. So
it's you come in the home and it's not this the department coming in and you guys are gone and then maybe in 60 days.
No,
it's
no.
very, you guys are there.
We're there. We just want to talk. We want to, we just want to have a conversation. Be open. Be honest with us. Just talk us through. What's your normal day like? What sort of things go on? If there was a particular incident that we're looking at, tell me about that day. Tell me about the incident. What led up to it? What was the coming down off the incident? And then if there's something that comes up later, feel free to reach out. And we'll try to keep in contact with you guys as best we can about, hey, I scheduled management meeting, here's what I'm thinking, here's what we're gonna talk about, those sort of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Did you have any other things to touch base on?
I don't think so. I think that was about it. I think that was about it.
All right, guys. So if you guys have questions, now's the time. Go ahead and type them in. We'll try to touch base on them.
Yeah. I just did want to touch base really quick on, what if you guys do get a founded assessment, a founded finding? It does not mean that you automatically have the kids taken away. The kids aren't automatically moved from your home. It doesn't mean that you automatically get closed.
Okay, or go to jail.
Or go to jail. No.
Okay.
No.
So,
what it means is that it'll go into our database. It'll also go on I think one of your fingerprinting, and that changes. So don't quote me on it, but I do believe it goes on to a background check.
Yeah, most likely the BIU.
Yes.
The background investigation, which checks all of the child abuse and neglect registries.
Yep. And like I said, if you get a founded finding, you have the right to appeal it. And there will also be some recommendations, some follow-up that you need to do with your licensing agency. It may be more training, it may be, more check-ins, it might be therapy, it might be a support plan. It can look like a lot of different things. And I did want to say that if it is a founded finding, that the children's parents will be notified as well. We legally have to tell them if there's been an assessment and if it's founded.
So if the appeal is approved, does it get removed from your record?
It depends. That is a possibility. So it's a possibility. The appeals are case by case. So I don't want to say yes and then have something else happen in the state of appeals, but it's a possibility.
Yeah, in my experience, if it comes off as like they have this founded, like it doesn't show founded, but there obviously is always going to be still records of things in our state system, that things were investigated and this was an inquiry, but I think that it comes off for the most part. I don't know how many years it takes, because sometimes it takes a little while, correct? It can.
The appeals? Yeah, it can take a while.
Yeah, but usually you're licensed and obviously area will know what happens in the outcome. And that leads to the next question. Would being investigated prevent a foster home from being able to take certain kids?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily investigated. Would a founding? I think that depends on...
A founded finding? Depends on the licensing agency. It depends on what it was. But not necessarily. Like we said, everything is so case by case. Families are so unique. Kiddos are so unique that it doesn't necessarily change the type of kid that you can come, have in your home.
But on going off that, it may be best that if there's a certain type of kid that pushes the buttons, that maybe it's best to look at the type of children that are in the home.
And that's a discussion between you and your aerial case manager. That's not something that I'm going to determine. That's an ongoing conversation for you and your licensing agency.
So what you're saying is basically there's 3 options of what the outcome is, and there's no dependent, like, it's founded and now they can't do A, B, and C. It's founded.
It's founded. Here are some things that we think would help. Here are some trainings. Here are some articles. Here are some, here are some recommendations. You don't have to do them.
But it is on air. We would take that. We do take it very seriously.
Yes,
so.
and I don't know how much you guys know about stage 2 investigations or well, no, they're investigations.
Yeah.
But those come after we are done with our assessment. Then Ariel has a licensing. I keep wanting to say assessment. A licensing investigation. It's called a stage 2. And that's where they look to see, did Ariel follow up with the recommendations, and were there any big licensing violations and those sort of things.
And those can happen whether it's founded, unfounded, inconclusive. So
yeah.
All right, you guys have any more questions? I don't see any more pop up.
Okay.
I believe one time you've said in our past the burden of proof.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in the slideshow? Because I
don't know if it's in I don't know if it is in the slide. So our burden of proof is, and I think I spoke earlier. It's 50.1%. Like in criminal court, it's much higher burden of proof. I think it's like a 98 or 99 or something like that. So we have much lower burden of proof. So that means, that our evidence, we just have to prove 50.1% that it is true or not true.
So it works in both ways.
Yes.
Okay. All right. We've been doing 45 minutes, so
yeah.
Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
No. Just if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. If you don't feel comfortable talking with me directly about it, then that's absolutely fine. You can tell your aerial case managers, and they are more than welcome to reach out to me if you have any questions, or if something just doesn't resonate with you well, let's talk about it.
Yeah,
we're all about it.
Yeah. So guys, we're gonna finish up. I would like to say that I know multiple people that work and do your job, and you guys you're human, you care.
Yes.
Your goal is not to make people criminals, or and you just want people to be honest and open, and I think things go well typically. I mean, either way the outcome, but I think working with you and being just open and honest is one of the biggest things.
Absolutely. And I did want to you said something about criminals, and I totally forgot a huge piece of this is that we can't charge criminally. Only law enforcement can do that. So, nobody's going to jail, nobody's going to court. We are a civil entity, which means that we don't press charges. We won't go to court or anything like that.
That's good to know.
Yes.
So if you get a founded, again, it's a on your record, but it's not now you need to show up for court for this. That is on the police department and sheriff. So.
Yep.
Okay. Well, guys, thank you guys for watching. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
We're going to end it. And please, again, if you guys have any questions, reach out to Deni, reach out to your case manager, reach out to any of us, and we can really answer those as best as we can. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to end it.